Just in here enjoying the warmth of this wood heater. I wanted to talk about self-worth. It's an interesting little subject, one that sort of... Self-worth is one of these things that can turn on a pinhead. With some people, they may have a lot of self-worth and they can lose their job and a lot of their self-worth will drop in the space of a couple of hours. Some people have a very high self-worth regardless of other people's opinions of them. And some people, their self-worth is almost dependent on other people's opinions. You know, I'll tell you a little psychological fact. My sister told me this one. She's done 4 years in university, got a psychology degree, blah, blah, blah. Apparently, the people in the lowest socioeconomic groups usually have some of the highest self-worth. Now, I've sort of seen this in action. There's an area that, well, I went to today to do a bit of grocery shopping. And that's a pretty renowned area. You know, the cops have always got something to do there, if you know what I mean. There are people there who I've listened to when I've been in line at the welfare office at times. I've listened to in the shopping centre that welfare office is in. You know, I've talked to some of them in person. And, you know, these people, some of them are, you know, haven't really put in a day's work for about 12 years or more. And they've got a drug addiction and they deal drugs on the side, and yet their self-worth is right up there. It's really high. If you ask them about their family, they will also say that, you know, my family's one of the best ones around, and, you know, we basically everybody else kisses our ass, so on and so forth. I'm saying this minus, you know, the 60% of swear words they usually put in the sentence when they're explaining this to you. When you go into an area and see a 5-year-old boy come out with 3 swear words in one sentence, you know the sort of socioeconomic group that is likely to reside in that area. But all the same, some of these people have a very high self-worth. They believe they are better than qualified engineers, productive members of society in a job, maybe in the manufacturing sector nearby, and, you know, their self-worth is just flying high, pie in the sky. And yet, you can have someone who, well, you know, this year the local auto plant decided to announce that it's going to close in 2016. I think it's September 2016. People's self-worth who work there would have dropped quite a notch in the space of a couple of hours or less, regardless of the fact that these people have time to plan for the future, and that some of them are near retirement age anyway. And even if they're not, they've got a bit of time to plan their savings and their spending and whatever else they want to do. And these people are productive members of society. They're decent, good people who can write a sentence without more than 40% of the words having spelling mistakes. And they're productive members of society who are manufacturing vehicles for the rest of the nation. But it seems funny how, these people who haven't worked for years still have a high self-worth. Now, you may assume that people who, like everybody's trying to float their own boat, everybody is trying to pick up the good points of themselves, and that's what gives them their ego, and they define themselves by their good points. You'd be surprised that there's a lot of people, especially those with a negativity bug, who define themselves by their bad points. I'm fat, I'm this, I'm that, I don't have a boyfriend, I aren't as high paid as someone else I know, I don't have a newer car as the neighbour, blah, blah, blah. Some people are floating their own boat. They're full of themselves. They don't need anybody to give them compliments and build them up anymore. Because, hey, let's say it, frankly, some of them are up themselves. And, if you go onto these dating sites, you'll see a few girls like this, particularly the ones who are career women, who are qualified pen pushers, who maybe accountants or lawyers, but they're just out there fighting dragons, as one person I knew would put it. Not actually producing anything, they're just sort of fighting with a tax office or fighting with another bunch of pen pushers or something like that. It's all intellectual, it's all numbers, it's all piss and wind smoke as far as I'm concerned anyway. But they'll also have a very high idea of themselves. Now, some people who have a high idea of themselves may not have the rest of society or other members of society think they're great. I mean, there's a lot of people who think, people who are silver stackers, silver bugs, whatever you want to call us, are stupid. Why would you want to get this medal? It's not going to be worth anything. The future is digital currencies. Holy smokes, since when? I mean, you talk about currency with no gold backing it. Let's go one further and make a computer file and pretend that's worth something. God blimey, it might as well just be a picture of my sock. Whoa, this computer file's worth something. Why is that? Well, as Milton Friedman said, everybody only values those little green bits of paper because the next bloke values them. Well, there you go. What the Bitcoin people don't tell you is that Bitcoin has crashed twice already. They don't like to mention that. But, each to their own. Some people may believe they're on the right track, and that is what has built their ego up, whereas other people may not agree. There are accountants who think they've achieved something over manufacturing workers because they're smart. I can do something, I can get somewhere. Well, I know somebody who was an accountant and left. They had a kid, so they left the industry for a little while. They went to get back into it. They said it had changed so much. They had to spend 2 or 3 years relearning things just to get up to speed with what the current tax tactics and moves and ways of doing things were. how the legislation had changed. So while an accountant may have a great big high standing of themselves, if they get out of the game for a few years, that qualification that they spent several years in university working to get becomes almost worthless. And this is coming from someone who is an accountant. I'm a bit more practical. I put a bit of self-worth in people who can do stuff in the practical world. You know how many accountants and lawyers there are out there who cannot change a tyre on a car? They don't know how to jack the car up and change the tyre. Hell, I've even heard a certain person basically complain that their car is going to the pack on them because their tyre blew. I mean, they probably had bald tyres and they didn't even realise you've got to change the tyres once in a while if you want tread to still be on them. But they basically claimed that the entire car was failing and going to the pack because they had one tyre blow. Holy hell. Someone doesn't understand something about cars. I'd like to know when the last time they changed the oil was too. But I'm sure old Tony Mullins has seen a number of accountants on the side of the road looking all forlorn, like they've been blooming looking about as forlorn as a kid in primary school who's been decked in front of his class just because his accountant has a flat tyre, and then they're on the phone ringing up some mob to come and save the day by, winding a jack and flipping a few nuts off, bang, clonk, change over, bang, drop the car back down, and they're on their way. They had such a high standing of themselves, but they couldn't, change a few friggin' nuts? Are you shitting me? Holy smoke, when I was at Air Radiators all day, I used to, doing up nuts, there was, especially when I was in the preliminary testing section for, radiator cores, their initial test, to check the solder joins were good in them. Holy smoke, it was tens of thousands a day I was taking on and off. And these accountants can't even take off, 5 flaming nuts and then put the same 5 back on? But then they'll look down at me because, you're not a skilled accountant. Well, great, have fun fighting dragons, but I like to base my self-worth on what I can do in the practical world. It's sort of funny, though, how, there's differing opinions. And you can be affected by somebody else's opinion and what they think of you. And I think the funniest case of all this sort of stuff is it always seems that whatever somebody's got, they want the opposite, I have a cousin who has curly hair. And she looks nice with the curly hair. It suits her. It looks really good on her. But for years she didn't want curly hair, so she'd have to straighten it. And to be quite honest, her with straight hair, it really doesn't suit her. And meanwhile, you got girls with straight hair who are trying to curl it. And another particular person with very curly hair who has made a point of straightening it. But it seems whatever one side's sort of got, they're trying to get the other side, and they can only be relaxed when they've got the opposite of what they've already got naturally. It's sort of funny that, you got people here who severely detest unemployed drug addicts who haven't worked a day for the last 12 years. These drug addicts still have a high idea of himself, They still have a very big ego. I sometimes wonder if they're not holding on to that because that's about the only thing they've got to hold on to, if that makes sense. Another funny one is fat girls. Oh, these fat girls, as far as they're concerned, their life's over because they're fat. They might as well have been put into slavery or something because, oh, look at this little bit of tubiness. Flaming hell. You got feeder fetish people out there who are trying to get fatter. I mean, you go onto YouTube and you type in feeder or feed-e or, something like that, like growing belly or something like this, fantasy feeder. You type in something along those lines, you'll have all this stuff come up about these people who are trying to put on weight, while the girl who does have weight is going on like she's got some sort of a lifelong disease that she's dying of just because she's got a few extra kilos around the midsection, And to top it off, you got blokes there who like big girls. I mean, hell, I don't mind big girls myself. I sort of do like them. But I'm fat, so I've got to be skinny. And then you got these people that, are out there trying to get fat. And yet they've based their whole ego on the fact that they can't change what they already are into being something that they are not naturally. What the friggin' hell's on with that? It's funny how, some people, they're all worried about what everybody else thinks, especially these people that are keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, my BMW is 5 years old. My mate's got a new one. If I don't get a new one soon, I'm going to fall out of favour with this social group. They're going like hell to keep up with this social group. One accountant's got to keep up with all the other accountants. Otherwise, he's going to fall behind. So they all run themselves deep into debt and then do all the overtime they can to try and keep up these credit payments. And each one's trying to outdo the other. Each one's getting as deep in debt as the next one is. And then going like hell to pay it all back. You know that if you borrow $100,000 for a house, this is what they tell you over here, if you borrow $100,000 for a house, at the end of the day you end up paying $250,000. The only one that's winning out of all that crap of keeping up with the Joneses is the people who are selling you this tacky Chinese shit and all these overpriced shoes that your wife's filling the wardrobe up with. And the bank, because the bank loves winning, and they often do, especially when it comes to keeping up with the Joneses. But anyway, it's just a little thing I wanted to tell you about self-worth. You may also think wealthy people are always fine and happy and whatnot. Some wealthy people define their status in the world by the fact they've got cash. I used to work for a certain place who, well, I never saw this happen, but I had it told to me that these people would sit down at the lunchroom and they would say, I'm richer than you, you, and you combined. And that's the sort of crap they'd say to the employees. But at the end of the day, when the lights went out at night, they may have had plenty of problems that they were worrying about. They could have actually been saying crap like that to try and bolster their own confidence. Because deep down, their self-worth mightn't have been quite as what it seemed on the surface. Some businessmen do worry that they can't connect with their teenage son or daughter, that one of them's addicted to drugs, that their employees think they're losing touch and their wife thinks they're going bald. So some people also hide what they really feel about themselves, and they put on this show to try and bolster their self-worth. I sometimes wonder if the same isn't with these unemployed drug addicts, that they're not trying to do the same thing. That's a little bit of food for thought for you all anyway. I just thought I'd talk about that.